Fantasy football can be a cruel mistress. One week you're on top of the world, and the next week your team looks like absolute garbage. Let's talk about some players this week who absolutely disappointed, maybe some who have been disappointing all year, and I'm going to tell you, should you or should you not be panicking on them. And let's start with that Thursday night game, and hey, we finally had a George Kittle game. All it took was Brandon Ayuk getting hurt and not playing, I guess. I don't know, but George Kittle bounced back. Unfortunately, we did not have a Darren Waller game. Dare I say he looks old, bad, just not looking good. I mean, the targets are there, but the receptions and the yards and the connection just isn't there. The Giants' O-line is decimated right now. The 49ers basically just pinned their ears back and came straight after Daniel Jones in this game. I got to think it'll get better for Darren Waller, but will it ever be great? I don't know. Hard to see good things from this Giants offense. Looks like this team has regressed back to the Giants we expected. Panic level, probably moderate for Darren Waller. Still pretty much a set and forget tight end. And speaking of the Giants, what about Daniel Jones? He has had one good half of football in 3 games, and people actually were okay drafting this guy as their QB1 in 1 QB leagues. Please, if you're still rolling with Daniel Jones in your 1 QB league, drop him, pick up somebody else. He's not that guy. Speaking of the Thursday night game, before we get to the Sunday slate, let me remind you, if you haven't signed up at UnderdogFantasy.com yet, use promo code ENDGAME and you will get access to their new customer line this week. Jared Goff only has to go over half a yard in this game and you win. Pair him with one other line that you like and you can triple your entry. Use code ENDGAME, UnderdogFantasy.com, and they will match your deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. UnderdogFantasy.com, use ENDGAME. On Sunday, what was supposed to be the game of the week were the Chargers and the Vikings, and at least for a half, this was a big letdown. Really was a big letdown most of the game. On the Chargers side, they all came through, except we may have just lost Mike Williams for the season. Prayers up, Big Mike. The other big loss for the Chargers was Joshua Kelly. 2 straight weeks of being invisible. Last week, you could say, well, it was the Titans. I mean, it's a good run defense. What can you say this week? Absolutely awful. 17 yards on 12 total touches, not getting it done. I don't care how long Austin Eckler is out for. You cannot start Josh Kelly anymore. Drop this guy if you need to. And then on the Vikings side, Addison didn't come through with the big game I expected, but he had plenty of chances here. Better days will be ahead. We're not panicking on Jordan Addison just because he didn't go off in this week 3 game, right? And then we had Houston versus Jacksonville, and Stroud looks like the real deal here. He looks like he's going to be an absolute star. Dameon Pierce did continue to struggle, but at least he kind of saved his day with a touchdown, so can't feel great about him going forward, but at least he did a little something this week. And then Nico Collins took a back seat to Tank Dell this week, but there's no panic here. You can't expect a guy to go off every single week. Tank Dell had a great game. Nico took a back seat. He'll be fine. As for the Jaguars, I guess the Texans really do own Trevor Lawrence. He has not played well against this defense historically. I thought he'd be much better this week at home, coming off a bad showing against the Chiefs. No Derek Stingley, and he really wasn't that good. The whole Jaguars team was really bad, to be honest. You can't put the panic level high on Trevor Lawrence, but this is 2 games in a row where he's kind of underperformed. You got to start getting at least a little nervous right now. And since that big week 1 game, Calvin Ridley has been outscored and overshadowed by Christian Kirk in each of the last 2 games. And again, even with Derek Stingley out for these Texans corners, he still couldn't get a lot going in this game. Had a couple bad false start penalties. Look, I think better days will be ahead for Calvin Ridley, but people who jumped the gun after week 1 and said this guy's an auto start, don't even think about it. Yeah, maybe we need to pump the brakes a little bit on the week 1 overreactions. Not really super panicked about Calvin Ridley. I think he'll be better, but he's not a guy you have to auto start every week. And then Saints versus Green Bay had a great comeback by the Packers late in this game, even against this elite Saints defense. But the big story here was Derek Carr left with some kind of shoulder injury. They're saying it's not a season ender. He may miss a few weeks. We'll have to keep our eye on that. But it didn't really affect Chris Olave, who is an absolute monster and will be a stud no matter who the quarterback is. On the Green Bay side, there wasn't really much to talk about here. Aaron Jones didn't play. Christian Watson didn't play. A.J. Dillon didn't play. What's that? Oh, I'm being told A.J. Dillon actually did play in this game and got benched. A.J. Dillon got benched in this game for guys I don't even know. I've never even heard of. A.J. Dillon looks like an absolute bust in fantasy. Looks terrible. Looks like a below average running back. A.J. Dillon can go to the waiver wire at this point. I don't care if Aaron Jones was ruled out for the season. I would never start A.J. Dillon in another matchup. Drop him. Atlanta versus Detroit featured the battle of the rookie first-round running backs, and it disappointed pretty completely for these guys. I mean, Gibbs was okay, Bijan was okay, but didn't really live up to expectations for these guys. But look, Gibbs had 17 carries. Bijan is awesome. We're not panicking on these guys, I hope. As for the Falcons pass catchers, Pitts did lead the team in receiving and targets, but it wasn't a big game for him. And Drake London, after the first series where he had 2 catches, kind of disappeared in this game. And I think that's just what we're going to have to accept with this Falcons passing attack. Drake London, a very volatile, boom-bust type of wide receiver. Kyle Pitts, who knows what we're getting on him. This passing attack of the Falcons, Drake London and Kyle Pitts, we got to be at least a little concerned here. Buffalo versus Washington. James Cook didn't get that touchdown that everybody thought he would get because he just had the birth of his child, but it didn't really matter. This whole Buffalo offense was great. If you started one of them, you're probably feeling good. As for the Commanders, oh boy, Sam Howell. What a disaster this game was. I mean, throwing passes directly to the defenders. He looks awful. And by extension, it made the entire Commanders offense look awful. Probably going to be another very volatile situation like Atlanta, where some weeks Sam Howell is going to look great like he did in week 2, and some weeks he's going to look like week 3 Sam Howell and do nothing. It's just going to be the nature of this offense, and we're probably going to have to cherry pick the good matchups. Patriots versus Jets was an ugly game as we all expected, but nobody was uglier than Zach Wilson. I don't even understand how this guy is still a starting quarterback. And look, Garrett Wilson, I love the player. He's phenomenal. I was touting him as a first-round pick all year because he had Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't have Aaron Rodgers anymore. You can't trust this guy going forward. Zach Wilson looks terrible. And Robert Saleh just came out right after the game and said, Zach Wilson is still our guy. Why? Do something at the quarterback position. Anything, please. Garrett Wilson, if you can still trade this guy for anything decent, please, I beg you. Do it. I asked you last week to trade him. I'm begging you again, while you can, try to trade Garrett Wilson. But the panic level on this Jets offense has to be sky high. Tennessee versus Cleveland, and the Titans offense looked about as expected versus a good defense like Cleveland, which is really bad. And Derrick Henry losing touches to Tyjae Spears, losing third down snaps to Tyjae Spears. Look, I still think Derrick Henry will be okay going forward, but man, the days of Derrick Henry, top 5 league-winning running back, look like they are over. This offense is a complete disaster. This offensive line is a mess. They can't block anybody. Derrick Henry, he'll have his moments when he scores touchdowns, when he rips off a long run, but he's probably going to be pretty frustrating this year. Now, Deshaun Watson had the bounce back game we were hoping for, and Amari Cooper went off, and it could have been bigger if not for a referee. And if you spent fab on Jerome Ford right now, you're probably feeling pretty good considering what he did against a tough Titans defense. If you spent fab on Kareem Hunt, well, Indianapolis versus Baltimore. Look, Zach Moss looks like he might be a pretty much every week start at this point, looking good, even against a tough Ravens defense, at least until JT comes back, if he comes back. And on the other side, Zay Flowers didn't have the huge game we expected, but he had a decent game, got targets, got looks, just didn't have any big plays. Not panicking on Zay Flowers. And I'm also not panicking on Mark Andrews, who had a down week. It's okay. Lamar Jackson didn't throw the ball a whole lot in this game. Better days will be ahead for Mark Andrews. Chicago versus KC. Despite Chicago going out, getting them new weapons, an upgraded defense, an allegedly upgraded offensive line, Justin Fields looks even worse than he looked last year. I don't think you can start this guy going forward. He does have a week 4 matchup against the Broncos. Is that enough? Probably not. Panic level sky high on Justin Fields. If you have better options on your waiver wire, I would absolutely pick them up and start them over Justin Fields. And by extension, this means panic level has to be extremely high on DJ Moore as well. He did save his day with a garbage time touchdown, dropped a long pass, but are you going to really bank on this week in and week out with the way the Bears offense looks, the way the defense is, the way Justin Fields looks? If you can trade DJ Moore right now and get anything decent back for him, I absolutely would. And then Dallas versus Arizona, upset of the week. This Cardinals team is playing hard, man. They are trying to win games, and I guess this Cowboys defense really missed Trayvon Diggs because after carrying your team to a win in weeks 1 and week 2, they pretty much let you down in week 3. But look, still a good defense. Arizona was at home, playing hard. They'll be fine. As for the Cowboys, you got to be a little nervous about Dak Prescott right now. In week 1, didn't have to throw a lot. Week 2 looked pretty good, but then looked not so good in week 3 against the Cardinals. Every time they would get close to the goal line, something would happen, a penalty and bad interception. But look, I think Dak Prescott will bounce back. He will get better. It's not like this is a guy you drafted as an early round QB. It's not time to panic overly on Dak Prescott. He'll be fine. Then we had Carolina versus Seattle, and has Andy Dalton saved this passing attack? I mean, even making Adam Thielen look like Adam Thielen from 3 years ago. Maybe, but the problem is Bryce Young is the future, not Andy Dalton. And as soon as Bryce Young can play, Bryce Young is going to be the guy back in here. So enjoy it this week if you started any of these guys. Maybe enjoy it next week if Bryce Young's out again. But once Bryce Young is ready, he's the QB, and this passing attack will once again be terrible. And then finally, we had the Denver versus Miami game. What has happened to this Denver defense? This defense was elite last year. Now they're terrible. 70 points. That does not happen in modern football. Unbelievable giving up 70 points to this Dolphins offense. As far as their offense go, Jerry Jeudy looks like he's way behind Courtland Sutton right now. And look, Marvin Mims is creeping up on Jerry Jeudy, looking good, making plays. Jerry Jeudy was drafted 60 picks ahead of Courtland Sutton in fantasy drafts and over 100 picks ahead of Marvin Mims. And pretty soon he might not even be the number 2 guy on this team. You gotta be panicking if you got Jerry Jeudy. And then there's the Dolphins. If you started one of these guys, congrats, you took home the W. And if you were one of the 4% of people who actually started Devon Achane this week, well, all I gotta say is, well done.